Nah.
Leading off, and in the host seat, he's no longer the sports director, but that doesn't mean you got rid of him. He's the dictionary definition of a five-tool player. If those tools are bad takes, being loud, constantly late, and defending the Reds until the day he dies. Standing 6'2" on a really good day. Weighing a $160 soaking wet, here's Shea Neal. Batting second, he's like the leadoff hitter but with less patience. He constantly confuses matches for games. He's a two-time self-awarded baseball coach of the year, which he will tell you constantly. He might be the worst office basketball player in WWSU history, literally. Standing 5'10", weighing maybe 130, here's Parker Testa. All right, now that those BS intros are out of the way, let's get on with the show.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to Testa and Neal Keep It Real right here on WWSU 106.9 FM and our YouTube channel, WWSU 106.9. In case you're thinking that the setup's a little different, it's because Parker's back in Dayton.
I am.
Welcome back.
It's good to be back. Glad to be here. It feels weird doing well, not really live.
Better equipment,
studio
right?
show.
Yeah,
It feels different.
Yeah, and it almost feels like, I feel like, when you're sitting in the studio with, like, the professional mics and stuff, you almost feel like, the radio equivalent of a superhero. So
right.
When we're sitting at home and just talking into our laptops, it's not quite as fun as when you're sitting in here.
Not at all. It's been, almost 2 months since we've done an actual studio show, so I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun one, too.
We've got a lot to get into today. A big show. We always try to have fun on Fridays, and I don't think today's an exception. You saw, if you tuned into the show on Wednesday, you saw that we did our first ever college football conference preview, and that was the American Athletic Conference, which I had a lot of fun with. I knew a little bit about the UC Bearcats, but it was a lot of fun learning about some of those teams that you don't always hear about, like UCF, like Houston, like SMU, like Memphis, who I think has a lot of talent. So it was fun to get into that, but today we're going with a conference that I think a lot of people know about because they're in the Power 5. They are the big boys of the West Coast. We're going out west, and we're talking Pac-12 today, Parker.
Yeah, we are. And this one's a lot of fun. You got Oregon, Stanford, USC, Washington. So this is going to be a fun one today.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And the Pac-12 for me it's not the best of the Power 5 conferences. Obviously, you have the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12. I'd put the Pac-12 kind of like in the ACC, a tier behind those top three. But what I like about the Pac-12 is with those other conferences, you kind of know what's going to happen before it happens. Like ACC, you don't need to be a rocket scientist for me to tell you Clemson's going to win the ACC.
Yeah.
SEC, it's going to be Bama or Georgia. Big 10, it's going to be Ohio State. Big 12, Oklahoma or Texas. So with the Pac-12, yeah, it might be USC. They have a good shot. It might be Oregon. They have a good shot. It might be Utah. They have a good shot. But the Pac-12 feels like the one Power 5 that we don't know who the favorite is.
Right, and like you said, the ACC, Clemson, Big 10, kind of shaky, but it's probably Ohio State. SEC, Alabama. So the Pac-12 is wide open right now.
It sure is. So I'm excited to break that down here in hour number 1. Hour number 2, we still got a lot of fun for you. MLB Home Run Derby coming up on Monday. And it's a really star-studded list this year. Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, Pete Alonso, Matt Olson, Joey Gallo. It's a lot of really big names that have a lot of really, really good home run swings. So I think Monday night's going to be an absolute blast. So we're going to break down each participant of the 2021 Home Run Derby. And we're also going to give our picks for who we think will win the Home Run Derby coming up on Monday night. So a lot to get into. We'll probably also, throw in some small talk about some of the big series this weekend. I know the Reds have a big weekend series going up against the first-place Brewers in Milwaukee starting tonight. The Reds sit, I believe, 5 games back of first place right now. So if they can take 3 out of 4 this weekend, they're within 3 games of first place heading into the All-Star break, which is huge because, just a couple weeks ago they were like 7 games back. So this is a big series for a lot of teams this weekend. It's crazy to say in the second week of July, but we're starting to think playoff implications now.
Yeah, we are. And one thing that we talked a little bit about earlier is how damn good Shohei Ohtani is. He has 32 home runs, and it's not even the All-Star break yet.
He just broke the record for most home runs by a Japanese-born player in a season. We're not even halfway through the season.
No. He's so good.
It's unreal. And the guy whose record he broke, Hideki Matsui, is one of the best Yankees of the last 20 years.
It's insane. And like you said, he might hit 70 home runs and have a 2.1 ERA.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, and I mean, credit to guys like Vlad Guerrero Jr.'s had an unbelievable season. Jacob deGrom having a historic type season. Nick Castellanos on the Reds. I mean, he's been great. But stop kidding ourselves. We're not even halfway through the season, but I can tell you right now, give Shohei Ohtani MVP. He deserves it.
He does. And we joked earlier, but not really. You can give it for both leagues because he's been dominant, really everywhere. So,
he also, I believe they tracked his top sprint speed is like 29.4 miles an hour, which is in like the 96th percentile. Like, the only players that are faster than Shohei Ohtani at top speed are Billy Hamilton, Tim LeCastro, and, like, who's the other one?
Trey Turner?
Trey Turner, probably, yeah. So, like, he's like the 4th or 5th fastest player in the MLB, too.
How is it possible?
He's 6'5", and he's supposed to run that fast.
For someone to hit as many bombs as he does, to throw as good as pitching as he does, 100 miles an hour, and nasty breaking stuff, and he's fast as hell.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
It's not, no. And I bet if they ever put him out in right field, he has a cannon of an arm. I bet he'd be a Gold Glove right fielder too.
It's not fair, man.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. It's really not. And the stereotypical Japanese baseball player over the last 20, 30 years, the Ichiro Suzuki's, the Shogo Akiyamas, the Hideki Matsui's, we don't see many slugging Japanese players. They're usually guys that are very fundamentally sound, hit for a high batting average, play solid defense, and don't make a lot of mistakes. Shohei Ohtani doesn't make a lot of mistakes, but this guy's 6'5", 230 pounds, still only 26 years old, and I mean, it feels like he was built in a lab. Like, is this the secret government lab project that Japan's been working on for the last couple of years? Because it seems like it.
It's not fair. It's not, and I don't know how it's possible for people are trying to emulate that. How do you emulate Shohei Ohtani? You got to be really fast, have a hell of an arm.
100 miles an hour.
Yeah, you throw 100 miles an hour.
And hit 50 bombs a year.
Right.
In the best league of baseball in the world.
We thought we might never see something like Babe Ruth again. Babe Ruth was great at pitching, great at hitting, but he wasn't fast.
No.
Ohtani has all three of those things,
yeah.
and we may never see anything like this again.
Well, and we said this as a joke, but it's true. He's the first ever six-tool player. He hits for average. He's hitting 280. He's up to like 284 now. He hits for power. Leads the league in home runs. He has the arm. He's a pitcher, but he has an absolute cannon of an arm. He has the glove. He has the speed. Oh, and yeah, he pitches, and he's the best pitcher on the Angels.
It's not fair. It's not. So I just don't know. Ohtani's my favorite for the Derby.
It's between him and Gallo for me.
Yeah. It's gonna be tough. Both
Gallo's swinging a real hot bat right now. He has like 10 home runs in his last 11 games.
He's really good. It sucks that he's gonna get traded.
But he might get traded to like Atlanta or Milwaukee or something.
It'd be good for both those teams to get a guy like Gallo.
The Reds. No, I'm just kidding. We don't need him.
It's tough.
Guess we could put him in center field. But,
right.
No. I said the Reds. As much as I want them to get Trevor Story, I'd say it's like a 10% chance that happens because I don't think the Reds are going to want to give up a top 5 prospect for 2 months of Trevor Story.
Yeah.
And before this year, I think the Reds would have considered trying to give Story an extension. But now, if you give Story an extension, you have to let Castellanos walk, and I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to make Castellanos a Red for life.
Yeah, and I really don't know. It's tough. I mean,
Story's hitting like 184 this year outside of Coors. That's really scary.
Yeah, and if you can't hit well anywhere else other than Coors, there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to get traded. Gallo's going to get traded. There's going to be a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of moves at this deadline.
I think the first piece to fall. Who would you say is the first piece to fall? I think it's either Adam Frazier with the Pirates or Eduardo Escobar with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Escobar has been in a lot of talks for a month now, but it sounds like more and more teams are in on Adam Frazier. Like the Mets are interested, the White Sox are interested. I'm sure teams like the A's and the Padres and stuff like that are interested as well. But I think it comes down to either Frazier or Escobar. That's the first kind of piece to fall.
I'm leaning towards Frazier is that first one. Things like the guys like Gallo and Story and among others are going to take a while. One that I think, we could also see pretty early is
Story, I think, gets traded on deadline day.
Yeah, I do too. One that I think we could also see pretty early because the team isn't very good is Nelson Cruz.
That's fair. I've heard Toronto's in on him. Imagine Cruz in that lineup with that as a DH. Oh man, imagine if your lineup. Let's envision this Blue Jays lineup. Springer. Well, they hit Springer like second now, right? Because they have Biggio lead off. Okay, so Biggio, Springer, Guerrero, Cruz, Bichette, Hernandez, Grichuk, Jansen. Who am I forgetting? Semyon. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I have Semyon at 9.
It's not fair.
No, that's the best lineup in baseball.
And I love watching that Blue Jays team. Yeah. I do.
If they can get 2 relievers at the deadline that make that an average bullpen, and they can get Nelson Cruz, it's the best lineup in baseball with an average bullpen. That team might sneak up on the Red Sox and compete for the East.
I think with that, if they pull that off, the 3 best teams in the East right now are the Rays, the Sox, and the Blue Jays.
Oh yeah, I think the Blue Jays have played better baseball than the Yankees for a month now.
They have.
The Yankees just don't look good. The Yankees look like they need a reset almost.
Right.
It's just the only 2 players that have had a decent season for the Yankees are Judge and Stanton. Other than that, everyone's been underwhelming. Even Garrett Cole.
Right, and it's.
Does Boone survive the season?
I think he does.
Okay.
If they get rid of him, they wait till the end.
I think it's crazy to say because I think everybody said fire Boone. I think they get rid of Cashman before they get rid of Boone.
I do too.
Because Cashman, it just feels like we talked about it with Mike Tomlin with NFL. We talked about it with Mike Zimmer. Sometimes when you've been a coach or an executive at the same place for a long time, your philosophy, your mentality, kind of where it doesn't work the same way it did in 1999. And I think that's what we're seeing here with Cashman. Cashman was the best executive in baseball for 1995 to 2009. But over the last 8 years, we've seen good Yankees teams that can't get over the hump. And why can't they get over the hump? They have the pitching, they have the hitting. I guess you got to start pointing fingers at the guy that's building the team because clearly something's not getting done.
No, it's not. And
I still think Cashman's a top tier executive.
Oh, I do too.
Just the results aren't there.
Right.
Yankees fans don't want to go 12 years in between World Series appearances.
No, they don't, and this is it's tough. It is. I want to see, well, I don't want to see the Yankees do well, but I want to see them be, I want to see them go through a slump, and I want to see how they handle it because as long as I've been alive, the Yankees haven't been bad.
I think the worst Yankees team of my life was like 85 and 77.
Yeah, so it's still they're still over 500 by
and they will
6
be
or 7 games
at the end of the year. They're not going to be a losing team.
No, they're not, and they're going to be 3rd or 4th in the division and fall out of the playoffs. But
honestly, if they start picking up steam really quick, I still think they have the talent to finish 2nd.
They do. I think the Red Sox win this division.
I think the Sox win this division. No doubt about it.
But it's tough for me because I don't see enough consistency from the Yankees to put them in that top 3 now.
Yeah, the one question mark that the Sox had heading into the year was their bullpen, and their bullpen's been great. Alex Cora's done a heck of a job managing that bullpen.
Yeah, he
And
has.
the big thing is the Red Sox already look really good and already are in first place with, I don't know if they have the best record in the league or not, but they're like one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league. It's them, the Giants, and the White Sox, I think, are the 3 best records, right?
Yeah.
Right. But they still don't have Chris Sale back.
No.
Sale comes back. If Sale is 60% of what he was before that Tommy John surgery, this Red Sox team, I think, wins 100 games.
I do too. And as crazy as it is to say, after this Red Sox team wasn't good last year with Renicky at the helm, it's the Alex Cora effect.
Cora's a heck of a manager.
And I've said this multiple times on this show. I've never heard of Bobby Dahlbeck before this year, but he's been pretty good.
And Chaim Bloom knew he'd take a lot of heat for bringing Cora back after that scandal, but he did it because he wanted the Red Sox to win. And I give him a lot of credit for having the guts to do that because it's paying off. Cora's done a heck of a job, and I mean, if it's going at the rate it's going right now, he's my favorite for AL Manager of the Year.
Yeah, he is. That's an interesting debate we could have. Who's your NL Manager of the Year? Is it Kapler?
The Reds fan in me wants to say David Bell because I think he's done a great job with the worst bullpen in the league, but it's got to be Gabe Kapler.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's possible that both those guys are.
If the Reds win the Central, I think it's a debate. Because I still think there's a chance. I don't think the Giants miss the playoffs, but I still think there's a chance that they fall out of first.
Yeah.
And if the Reds sneak up on the Brewers and win the Central, especially with the bullpen they have right now, their 2 best arms right now that Antone and Sims are hurt is 36-year-old Brad Brock and Heath Hembree. So David Bell's, playing with a AAA bullpen right now, and they're still 5 games over 500 and only 5 games out of first. So if the Reds find a way to win this division, I think David Bell is firmly in that conversation for NL Manager of the Year.
Sweet. Dodgers didn't get swept by the Marlins, so
Nice.
I'm happy.
That's a win.
It is a win.
Now I need the Reds to sweep the Brewers, or at least take 3. So what happens this weekend? They play, so tonight and tomorrow, the Reds have to win. The pitching matchups tonight, Mahle versus Adrian Hauser. I mean, Mally's the better pitcher. You got to find a way to win tonight. Tomorrow, Eric Lauer versus Wade Miley. Wade Miley's been a top 15 pitcher in the league this year. You got to find a way to win against Lauer and Hauser. Like, those are the Brewers. You don't have to face Burns. You don't have to face and then we get to the weekend. Saturday's going to be a really tough game to win. It's Vladimir Gutierrez, who's been a strong rookie for the Reds, but he's going up against Freddie Peralta, who's been really good this year. And then Sunday, battle of aces, Castillo and Woodruff. So Castillo still has, he's 3-10 with like a 4.9 ERA. It doesn't look good, but over the last 8 starts, he's I think 2-1 with a 2.13 or something like that. He's been a top 5 pitcher in baseball over the last month and a half. So it's really a matchup of 2 really hot pitchers right now because Woodruff's an all-star. Castillo's been really good over the last month. So you got to win tonight. You got to win tomorrow. I'm not counting on Saturday because I think, I'd take Peralta over Gutierrez I think that's a pretty easy matchup to decide on. But you got to find a way to either win Saturday or win Sunday. You got to win 3 out of 4 if you want a shot to catch him in first. And it might come down to, can Castillo outpitch Brandon Woodruff?
Yeah, and that's really tough because Woodruff has been really good this year.
They're 2 top-tier pitchers. They're 2 aces. It's going to be a really good game on Sunday.
Right, it is. And so let's get into the main course of this first hour.
Absolutely.
Pac-12 Conference preview from Phil Steele.
Yeah, and the first thing I want to get into, with the American, we really only had 2 top-tier quarterbacks in that conference, in Desmond Ridder and Dylan Gabriel. The Pac-12 is so different. Yeah. I'm just reading off the 4 all-conference teams, preseason all-conference teams. Listen to these 4 names. Caden Slovis at USC, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who a lot of people forget how good he was at UCLA last year, right. Jaden Daniels at Arizona State, and Anthony Brown at Oregon. I mean, in almost any other conference in the country, Thompson-Robinson, Daniels, and Brown would be for top 2 teams, top 2 conference teams. So there's like 6 or 7 really, really good quarterbacks in this conference that could be all-conference team when it's all said and done.
Yeah, there are, and there's these teams that we are really. It's going to be a dogfight, both in the North and the South. USC, Phil has them at 1 in the South, but I honestly think Utah can make a push for that one spot.
Utah's more experienced. I think it's a tough debate, and we'll get into it, but I think USC is more talented, but Utah's more experienced, and a lot of times we see in football, experience trumps talent, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if it did here as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And, I think Washington's got to be the runaway favorite in the North.
It has to be. I think Oregon's the only team that can semi-hang with them.
Yeah, and I love Herm Edwards at Arizona State, but I don't think they're there yet. They just need, a little bit more experience, and they have a really tough division. They got Utah and USC, who are both really good teams in this conference. So. Let's get to the first team, and that's the Washington Huskies.
Yeah, absolutely. Washington, I am a big fan of this Washington team. I think they're extremely talented. It was a weird year last year. They only went 3-1 because the Pac-12 didn't start till late, if you remember right. The Pac-12 started in week 9 of the real season. So they only played 4 games last year. But they have 10 returning starters on offense, 8 on defense. This is already a really good team. I am very excited to see this team on the field. They have a very talented redshirt freshman quarterback in Dylan Morris. He had 4 starts last season, 61%, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. He made a couple freshman mistakes, but that's what we expect. But this kid, really talented, was a 4-star recruit, one of the best quarterbacks on the West Coast. And I know that Jimmy Lake in his second season is very excited to see Dylan Morris in a full season. This team just has talent across the board. They have solid receivers, solid backs, a solid offensive line, and a really strong defense that forces a lot of turnovers. And that's scary because, 3 of their 4 starters in the secondary, all 4 members of their secondary are sophomores, and then a lot of their front 7 as well, sophomores and juniors. So this is a defense that's only going to get better the more they're on the field.
Right, and this is one that we have a quarterback battle at Washington.
We do.
We do.
Morris is not a lock to start.
No, there's Morris, and then they have a transfer coming in from Colorado State named Patrick O'Brien. who started 12 games the past 2 years, and so he has experience. So this is going to be a fun one for Jimmy Lake.
Yeah, and this is really, I think what it comes down to is Morris ready to be a number one guy as a redshirt freshman, or does Jimmy Lake see the value in letting him sit for one more year? Patrick O'Brien could very well be the guy that if you want to win the Pac-12 this year, you go with him. But I don't think that takes away how they feel about Dylan Morris. I think they see the next 3 years of Washington football, Dylan Morris is the best player on the team.
Yeah, he is, and they also have a strong defense too.
Very strong defense.
It looks really good. They've pumped out some NFL talent, Vita Vea, Danny Shelton, among others. So
they always have great great defensive line. Yeah,
they do, and this is. This says last year they lost their entire starting unit, and the last guy of that starting unit opted out. So they had a brand new defense last year, and they played really well.
And a lot of true freshmen that played really, really well. And it's a defense that for a lot of you people that live in the Midwest, it's very similar to Tom Allen's scheme in Indiana. They're very aggressive. They blitz a lot. They send the house a lot. So opposing quarterbacks get ready for a lot of blitzes when you play Washington this year. And they're a team that loves forcing turnovers. This secondary, Trent McDuffie, as well as Kyler Gordon, Cameron Williams, and Asa Turner, like I said, all sophomores that started as true freshmen last year, and they were ball hawks, man. They forced a lot of turnovers, a lot of passes, a lot of pass breakups, a lot of interceptions, a lot of forced fumbles. They emphasize strip that football, recover the ball when it's on the ground, make the play. This is like the Indiana defense of the West.
Yeah, it is, and at running back they have Richard Newton, who's going to be in his second year. His biggest game was he had 8 for 81, but I expect those numbers to go up for Richard Newton because he looked very strong last year.
And he's a guy that runs a lot like Maurice Jones-Drew. He's bigger than Maurice Jones-Drew, but he just has that kind of bowling ball effect to me where this is not a guy that you're going to tackle on the first hit. This is a guy that's just going to bounce off 2-3 defenders every single play. So if you want to slow down Richard Newton, you're going to have to blitz. And if you blitz, guys like Dylan Morris or Patrick O'Brien, whoever's the quarterback, they're going to be able to take the top off the defense with really talented receivers in Roma Dunzi, who they're very excited about, this freshman, 6'3", 205. It's like he's a receiver that was built in a lab. He's the perfect size wide receiver to be, the X in an offense. And then they also have one of the best slot receivers in the conference in Tyrell Bynum Jr.
Yeah, and he's very strong. He's a smaller guy, 5'9", 188, but that's the perfect build for a slot receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just looking at how good this defense is going to look. In 2018 they allowed 306 yards per game and 16.4 points per game. Last year their numbers slipped a bit last year they had 346, 25 points per game. But they're still very strong.
And the guy I really want to look out for. We talked about the secondary; they force a lot of turnovers. But the guy I'm really excited to see this year is the linebacker. I'm gonna butcher his name, but it's Edifwan Olafosio. I think that's how you said it, or Olafosio, or whatever. He was a true freshman last year, first team all conference. This is a guy, he can do it all. He can cover tight ends. He can even cover slot receivers. And he's a guy that he's a very smart player. He recognizes the play before the offense does half the time. Yeah. You see him in the backfield every other play. This is a guy that is always around the ball. Reminds me a lot of Devin White at LSU, and he's only a sophomore. So this is a guy I think is future Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, he looks very strong. He does, and I'm excited to see what this Washington team does. Their schedule's not horrible either.
No.
They start out at home hosting Montana. Week 2 is a bit tougher. They travel to Ann Arbor, take on the Wolverines.
And that'll be a great game because we'll talk about the Big Ten in a future show, but that's a big test for both of these teams. Washington projected to win the Pac-12 North. Michigan projected to be right there with Ohio State in the Big Ten. Michigan has that expectation. We want you to hang with Ohio State. So that'll be a big test right off the bat. Washington, if they can win in Ann Arbor, that makes them the team to beat in the Pac-12. If Michigan holds their own and beats the projected Pac-12 favorites at home, maybe they're a threat to Ohio State.
Yeah, it's possible. And, you go further down this list, you host UCLA, who's going to be tough. We'll get to them here in a few minutes. And then, Oregon, round out the year with Colorado, in Boulder, and then Washington State at home. So it's going to be fun.
And everyone's going to be talking about the Oregon game, the UCLA game, and deservedly so. But a game that I don't want people to sleep on at Stanford and Palo Alto. That's always a tough place to play.
Yeah, it is. And it's going to be, this is going to be a tough one as well. They go down to They go down to Arizona and take on the Wildcats. And this is not a pushover schedule by any means. It's one of the easier ones that we'll see in this conference. But Washington has a chance to be really good.
Let's move on to the Oregon Ducks, who is projected to be Washington's biggest threat in the North. Oregon, excuse me. Washington. I'm excited. I just did that again. Oregon, Washington. No, Oregon, Washington. Oregon. I'm very excited to see Anthony Brown in his senior season. Last year had, in his last full season, had 4,700 yards, 40 touchdowns at Boston College. This is a guy that is just a playmaker, man. He makes some mistakes. He'll throw some interceptions trying to fit it into tight windows. This is also a guy that has the talent to win you games just because of the plays he can make.
Right, and he looks really good. And they lost Herbert 2 years ago, but Shaw looks really good. And this team for Mario Cristobal looks really strong. They're gonna be tough. In the North they are, and they're, like you said, I think they're the biggest threat for Washington.
I do, for sure. And Oregon, when you talk Oregon, it's always the skill position players. They have speed, they have size, they have everything you could want at Oregon. And guys like DeAnthony Thomas, guys like Kenyon Barner, guys that didn't necessarily pan out in the NFL, but in college, Oregon's always got one of the fastest teams in college football, and that's no different this year. C.J. Verdell, 5'10", 210. He's the perfect back for this system because he can run over guys, but he can also beat you to the edge and just have that pure speed to get away. Micah Pittman, as well as Devin Williams and Johnny Johnson at wide receiver. It's a very solid receiving core. I'm excited to see this team on the field because it's got a lot of size. Pittman, great route runner, 5'11", but an elite route runner, right up there, I think, with Chris Olave as one of the best route runners in the country. Devin Williams, a sophomore, 6'5", 205. I guarantee you 5-6 times a game, it's just going to be go deep to Devin Williams, see if he can moss somebody, and it's probably going to work more times than not.
Yeah, it will. And they got this Boston College transfer, Anthony Brown, coming in. He's going to start.
And he was really good at BC. He was really good at BC.
He was.
Another thing I like about Oregon is their offensive line. And I feel like with the American, we didn't hit on the trenches as much as we should have. But Oregon's got a top-tier offensive line. You don't have top-tier receivers and top-tier running backs without a top-tier offensive line. And guys like Alex Forsythe, Stephen Jones, George Moore, T.J. Bass as well. It's an experienced group that has a lot of size. Everyone on this line, 6'4" or taller, 300 pounds or bigger. And for the people that are, you wouldn't expect a guy that's 6'5", 320 to move as well as some of these guys do, but this Oregon offensive line is extremely athletic, and Oregon likes to run a lot of, sweeps and tosses and all that kind of stuff. These guards and tackles do a great job setting the edge. This Oregon offensive line is maybe the best in the Pac-12.
Yeah, and they got 2 of their 5 starters on the preseason Pac-12 first team, and that's Alex Forsythe and T.J. Bass. So this team looks really strong, especially up front, and I'm excited to see what Anthony Brown comes in and does.
And let's talk about the defense, and we got to start with maybe the best player in college football, Kayvon Thibodeau. Former number 1 prospect in the country, chose Oregon, 6'5", 250 pounds. But here's the crazy part, Parker. 6'5", 250 defensive end, runs a 4.39 40.
It's unbelievable.
That's insane.
It's crazy.
Insane. This guy last year, very short season, sample size, only 5 starts, 35 tackles and 9 sacks, 7 strip fumbles as a true freshman.
It's unbelievable. It really is.
This is a guy, we haven't seen a defensive player win the Heisman since Charles Woodson. This is a guy to keep your eye on. I know Chase Young had an unbelievable first half of the year last year, and after that 4-sack game against Penn State, they said Chase Young for Heisman. Kayvon Thibodeau is my defensive guy to watch out for this year. This is a guy that has the talent. At the end of the year, he might have 20 sacks and 10 forced fumbles. He's that good.
Yeah, he's really good, and he's a lot of fun to watch too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think he's going to be the best defensive prospect in the draft.
I agree.
And yeah, I agree too. He's really freaking good. But this secondary is not nothing to kind of shy away from. It looks really good.
And guys like Thibodeau only are elite edge rushers when you have an elite secondary that doesn't allow receivers to get open.
Right. And this is a strong team. They got Michael Wright, number 2 at the corner. It's 5'11", 190, a bit of a taller corner there. Taller by college football standards. And then DJ James, who's 6 foot 190. So you got some big bodies as in your secondary, and that's very valuable.
And before we get to the schedule, the last thing I want to touch on, this could be the position that either makes or breaks Oregon's season. If this works out, this could be what puts them right up there with Washington, maybe over Washington as the best team in the North. If this doesn't work out, it could cost them a couple games in the season. They're starting Noah Sewell at middle linebacker, a true freshman, 6'3", 250. This was a big recruit. They like him a lot, but they're having him start at middle as a true freshman. That's a lot to ask. We'll see if he's up to the task.
Yeah, and one of the American teams had a linebacker start and call plays from day one, and it worked out for them. So maybe that's something that maybe they know something that we don't know. So
if he's the best linebacker on the roster already, I mean, he earned his playing time. But it's always risky starting a freshman, especially because middle linebacker is the quarterback of the defense.
Yeah, it is, and it's a risky decision, but by Coach Cristobal, but if it pays off, he's going to look like a genius.
Pays off, it might win him the North.
Yeah, so this schedule is definitely tougher than Washington.
Yes.
It is. They open up the year with Fresno State at home and then travel to Columbus, take on the Buckeyes. And that's not easy. And then, just 3 weeks later, they travel down to Palo Alto and take on the Stanford Cardinals.
What I'm seeing, Parker, is week 2 is going to be really fun. We've got Washington at Michigan and Oregon at Ohio State. It's kind of Pac-12 Big Ten rivalry. I like it. 2 of the big boys in the Big Ten going up against 2 of the big boys in the Pac-12. I love to see teams attacking their non-conference schedule. I feel like we see way too many of, St. Mary's School for the Blind going up against Alabama. And it's cool to see these really cool matchups.
Yeah, it is. And they go further down here. And
at Washington's going to be a great game.
Yeah, it is. And they go to Los Angeles, take on UCLA, and then like you said, at Washington, host Washington State, and then finish out the year in Salt Lake against Utah, and then at home against the Oregon State Beavers.
It's a really tough schedule. Phil Steele ranked it the 49th toughest schedule in the country. I'd put it in the top 25. That's maybe a top 3 tough schedule that we've talked about this year.
Yeah, it is. It looks really good.
That game in Columbus and then the Pac-12 is always hard. And their road games in the conference are brutal. I mean, their home schedule in conference play is pretty easy. Arizona's very inexperienced this year. Oregon State's not very good. Colorado, okay. Washington State hasn't been the same since Mike Leach left. But on the road, UCLA, Washington, Utah, and Stanford, that's 4 really hard road games after you go to Columbus to take on the Buckeyes.
Right, and I just had to fact check myself here. I said Utah, University of Utah was in Salt Lake, and it is. So,
okay.
So I'm correct. I just want to make...
the only city in Utah, isn't it?
I think so. I don't know. But, yeah, this schedule looks, it's definitely tougher than Washington. So they got it tough in Eugene.
And there's 2 sides to look at that. Washington having the lighter schedule might put them in first right off the bat if Oregon drops a game to Ohio State. But this schedule has the potential to battle test Oregon heading into the conference play. And if it works out, Oregon might be the better team heading into that matchup with Washington.
Yeah, it's possible. And
I think that's what Coach Cristobal's thinking.
Right. And they got, certainly have the talent there to be, really good. And if they can go out and they can play well and beat some of these teams and have a better record and they're playing better football before the Huskies, if I'm Jimmy Lake, I'm terrified of the Oregon Ducks.
Facts. And I think I think Phil Steele agrees, and I think you'll agree with me too. I think Washington deserves to be the favorites, but I think the Oregon Ducks have the talent to win the Pac-12, not just the North. I think they have the talent to win the Pac-12.
Yeah, I do too. And they're going to be it's going to be tough because they got to face Washington, to make that Pac-12 title game. So
that game, honestly, I do think that game is going to be the winner of that game is in the Pac-12 championship.
I do too. And the winner of that game is possibly Pac-12 champions.
Very possible.
Possibly. So let's move on here to next team, and that's the Stanford Cardinals.
I love Stanford. I think it's a team every year that gets unfair treatment. I think they always exceed expectations. I think everyone looks at the Pac-12 and they go, ooh, Oregon, ooh, USC, and even recently, ooh, Utah. Stanford's a really solid football team. It's not sexy, but it's consistent. And David Shaw's done a great job in his 11 seasons. It's going to be a little bit inexperienced team. 6 returning starters on offense, 8 on defense. So the defense is going to be pretty good. Their offense has a lot of guys that are, kind of learning the system. But the big question here is Tanner McKee, the true freshman. Looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback. There's still a few guys that are competing. But Tanner McKee, very young and inexperienced. He only played 1 game last year and threw for 62 yards. So this is about as inexperienced as they come. But he has the size to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country. 6'6", 230, and an absolute cannon of an arm. You know who, I hate to compare him to one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, but you know who that reminds me of, Parker? Josh Allen.
Yeah, it does. And he's, he has yet to take a snap here, but he looks really good. And he looks a lot, like you said, Josh Allen. And that's, no pressure, right?
No, right.
And that's,
play like an NFL MVP.
Yeah. Good luck. Go out there, and David Shaw's done a heck of a job here.
Yeah.
He has. He's developed some of, the NFL's best. Andrew Luck came from David Shaw, as well as Davis Mills, just drafted last year. So there's plenty of talent.
Kevin Hogan before him.
Right. And there's plenty of talent coming out of the Stanford Cardinal system here. So they look really good, and they got some talented receivers as well. Bryson Tremaine, as well as Michael Wilson.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Michael Wilson's a stud. I like him a lot. It's the perfect duo where we see with a lot of these top tier teams, you have the route runner and you have the big threat. And that's what Stanford has here. Michael Wilson, 6'2", 210, very speedy, very good route runner, gets open. And Elijah Higgins, only a sophomore, but he's 6'3", 235, and Bryson Tremaine, 6'4", and 205. So you got 2 guys that you can just chuck it up to, and they got the vertical, they got the athleticism to make big catches in big moments. And then you have Michael Wilson, who just constantly gets open. So I like this receiving core a lot. What we'll see, though, is a lot of David Shaw is trusting a lot of freshmen this year. You have Tanner McKee, like I said, at quarterback. Benjamin Urasek starts at tight end, 6'5", 245, another true freshman. And then on defense, 2 enormous defensive positions held by freshmen. Outside linebacker Stephen Heron, 6'4", 232. He's going to be kind of an edge rusher hybrid as well as a coverage outside linebacker. And then their number 1 pass rusher, Parker, this year is going to be a true freshman, Aaron Amtiaj, at 6'5", 250. They love this kid. He was their top recruit in the class this year. But he's a true freshman. That's a lot of expectations to be the number 1 pass rusher on one of the top teams in the Pac-12 as a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah, and it's very similar to what we saw with, who was that? Washington or Oregon had the starting linebacker.
Oh, that was Oregon.
The
middle linebacker.
It's very similar to Oregon. They have putting a lot of confidence in 19-year-old players, and but good for David Shaw. If they perform well, you look like a genius. If they don't, you still got time to work on them.
Absolutely. So I'm a firm believer, and I think David Shaw and Mario Cristobal are 2 guys that preach this as well. If you're the best at your position, I don't care if you're a freshman. You deserve to play. I feel like if I was ever a coach, I'll never be a football coach, and that's for good reason. But if I ever was, really in any sport, whatever you're the coach of, if I know that a guy on my roster as a freshman is better than a senior, I'm starting the freshman. I'm sorry, I don't play the game of, well, he's earned the chance to play. No, I'm playing the best guys on the roster, and I give David Shaw a lot of credit. If he believes these guys are the best on the roster, play them right away at 19.
Yeah, and I'm with you 100%. You play the guys that give your team the best chance to win.
Absolutely.
And if that's a freshman, sure. If it's a senior, go for it. But whoever's the better player. If a freshman beats out a senior, sucks for the senior.
Right. You shouldn't be protecting kids' feelings instead of trying to win football games.
Right. That's how you lose your job pretty
exactly.
damn quick.
And lose the locker room pretty damn quick.
Right. And like I said, if the senior beats a freshman,
that's expected.
It's
Freshman's
expected
to sit.
If the freshman beats the senior, sucks for the senior, but the freshman is the better player.
If the freshman beats the senior, you hope that it sparks a fire in the senior to work harder in practice, to work harder when he gets an opportunity, and prove that freshman that he can still ball.
Yeah.
So friendly competition, man. I say it all the time with the orgs on campus. I say it all the time in sports locker rooms. Friendly competition, rivalry sparks greatness. I firmly believe that. Freshman and a senior going head-to-head for playing time, those 2 are trying to one-up each other every day, and that's good for the football team.
Right, and it's like you said, friendly competition is how your teams get better. scrimmages, or I know a lot. Every single college football team has
Yeah.
team scrimmages before the season. That's how you find out who's gonna start where,
Right.
who's gonna play well, and who needs work. So
One of my favorite moments, starting in high school football through college through NFL, is the drills where you bring offensive lineman versus defensive lineman, tight end versus linebacker. You put them you put them up against each other and you say, all right, hit each other, see who can knock the other one over, and that's the rivalry that sparks greatness on a football field. Your star left tackle going up against your best defensive lineman. Let's see who hits the other one.
yeah, and it's awesome to see. The whole
The
team
whole team rallies around.
huddled
that.
around this circle where you're
You got Big Haas going up against Aaron Donald off the edge. It's
Right.
Like, all right, hit each other. See who hits each other harder.
Yeah, and then you got a running back up against your best safety,
Yep.
and wide receiver against corner, and
Mhm.
it's really fun.
Quarterback versus kicker.
Yeah, right.
Kicker versus punter would be funny though.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. So this schedule, it doesn't look terrible for the Stanford
No.
Cardinals.
And this is something that I mentioned yesterday on Wednesday when we did the American. We talked about how UCF and Cincinnati have big games that could spark losses, and Houston had a much lighter schedule. And if UCF and Cincinnati slip up, Houston could slide through. I think it's the exact same thing here. Oregon and Washington scheduled some really tough games.
They did.
And if that goes wrong for them, Stanford could be the team that takes advantage.
Yeah, and the big game that pops out to me on this schedule is on November 27th. They host the Fighting Irish.
That's going to be a tough game to end the year. Another game I really like right off the bat, at USC. Go on the road, take on Caden Slovis. That's going to be a big test right off the bat. Stanford wins that game, they're a contender in this conference. If they fall short, they might be another year away. But that second half of the schedule after their bye week is brutal. Washington at home, Utah at home, and then Notre Dame at home to end the year. At least they're all home games. But Palo Alto is going to be rocking in November because there's going to be some big football games for Stanford.
Yeah, there are. Like you said, Washington at the end of October. They got Utah first weekend of November, and then the last 2 weekends of the month, California at home and Notre Dame. So it's going to be a tough, final stretch.
And
for the Cardinals.
I love that vibe. That Washington game on October 30th, but Pac-12 games start at like 10 o'clock Eastern time. So by the time that Washington-Stanford game's right in the thick of it, right in the good part of the game, it's going to be Halloween night, and that's going to be really, really fun vibes.
Yeah, it is. And a couple of the road games, aren't pushovers either. Like you said, USC, they got to go to Tempe, take on Arizona State, and then Oregon State. So they don't have an easy schedule by any means, but that last stretch is going to be real tough.
Let's move on to the Washington State Cougars, Parker. They will have Nick Rolovich in his second season as a head coach. He was, of course, the longtime head coach at Hawaii. Well, I shouldn't say long time, like 5 years. But he came over from Hawaii after the Mike Leach went to Mississippi State. I never thought Mike Leach would leave Washington
Neither
State.
did I. Neither did I.
This team trying to find their footing under a new coaching staff. But they do have one thing that they do have that they don't have a question mark at his quarterback. And they have the grad transfer, Jarrett Guarantano, coming over from Tennessee. Very solid at Tennessee. Not spectacular, but 6,000 yards in 30 starts, 38 touchdowns, 17 picks. It's not a top 10 quarterback in the country, but it's a very solid quarterback that gives you a chance to win.
Yeah, it is. And this is going to be, he's going to give you good football. And he's was really strong with Tennessee. He had 30 starts, with the Volunteers. So he's going to bring Coach Rolovich, some real talent here. And you got a big back here, at your running back and Max. Oh, I'm going to butcher this. Max Borghi. I think I'm saying that right. Max Borghi, 5'10", 206. So he's a somewhat, he's not a tall guy by any means, but he's bigger. So this is
another one of those bowling ball type running backs.
Right. Yeah. So and this is going to be a lot of fun for Washington State.
Yeah, it is. The only thing that really concerns me about this offense for Washington State is I'm worried that they're going to be a little one-dimensional because their receivers are very undersized. We look at their top three receivers, and Travel Harris, Renard Bell, and Calvin Jackson. Their heights, respectively, 5'9", 5'8", and 5'10". Bell is 162. Harris is 182. And the biggest one, Calvin Jackson's 5'10", 194. That's a very small receiving core, and I don't know how many deep shots they're going to be able to take. Granted, I don't know exactly how fast all these guys are, but I'm worried that we're going to see a lot of short passing with the Washington State Cougars this year, a lot of slant routes, a lot of out routes, a lot of screens. And eventually, when you get to week 6, week 7, defenses start to pick up on that.
Yeah, they do. And, they have this fourth receiver on here named C.J. Moore, 6'4", 180. If they need a bigger guy, maybe they'll go to him. But, I completely agree with you. They're going to be leaning on, Borghi a lot. And, but if Garantano is really good, he's good at, fitting the ball into some of these tight places. One thing about shorter receivers is they're very quick, and maybe that's what Coach Rolovich is leaning on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. On defense, it's a more experienced group. Honestly, their defensive line a little younger, 3 sophomores and a junior, but their linebacking core features 2 seniors, and their secondary a lot of juniors, a lot of seniors. So this defense has a lot of experience. It's not the best in the conference by any means, but they hold their own.
Yeah, they do, and they have, it's definitely a lot more experience than some of the other teams. This is one of the more experienced teams in this conference, and their defense looks really good, and I'm excited to see what they do. They have a couple of bigger corners. Both these corners are 6'3", one of them 185, one of them almost 200. So they got some bigger corners here with the Cougars.
Yeah, they do, and that's become a common theme over the last couple of years. We saw it with the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft this year, J.C. Horn, almost 6'5" as a corner, and he was great. He out jumped a lot of receivers because he's built like a receiver. So I think we're going to start to see a lot more 6'2", 6'3" corners in college football.
Yeah, I think so too, and this is going to be, it's going to be really cool to see. We're used to the smaller corner going up against the 6'5" receiver. And that 6'5" receiver wins a lot of the time. It's very rare that you see a receiver who's 6'5" going up against a 5'9", 5'10" corner lose that battle. And these bigger corners are becoming more and more common, like you said.
So I'm just curious, are we able to see how long we've been recording for?
48 minutes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I know when we got to hit our legal.
Yeah.
We look at this Washington State schedule. It's very backloaded, I feel like. Their 2 tough games in the front half are USC at home and Utah on the road. But Utah State, Portland State, at Cal, Oregon State, it's not easy, but it could have been a lot tougher. But they end the year at Arizona State, at Oregon, and at Washington in 3 of their last 4 games. So if this team's hanging around through the front half, they're going to get a chance to play in some big, meaningful games. But if they're a team that's a year or 2 away, it could also be a team that plays spoiler at the end of the year.
Yeah, and the 3 games that look really, really big to me is Stanford at home, BYU at home, and going on the road to Eugene to play the Oregon Ducks.
Mm-hmm. No doubt about it. I think it's going to be really exciting to see this team and what they're able to accomplish. I think it's a team that's it's maybe the wild card of the Pac-12 that we talked about so far. I could see a lot of things going right and this team being a top 3 team. I could also see a lot of things not going the way that they want them to go, and it's a team that struggles.
Yeah.
So it's the first team. I think the first 3 we talked about, Washington, Oregon, and Stanford, are all going to be good. This team, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. It's really a toss-up. They haven't had it was real tough for some of these guys last year. And they struggled a bit at times, but this year is a toss-up. It really is. I don't know how Garantano is going to play. No one does. So it's gonna be interesting for sure. Next team for us is
Aaron Rodgers.
The Cal Golden Bears, and this is Justin Wilcox is their head coach, and he's got some really he's got some experience here. He does. They're gonna have the junior Chase Garbers at quarterback, and he threw for 1,500 yards. So last year, and in 10 games. So he's not a pushover guy by any means.
No, he's not, and He's a guy that struggled a little bit last year with turnovers. He had 10 interceptions. The year before, only 3. So I'm sure they're looking to see that version of Chase Garbers this year. But it's a team that I like. They have Christopher Brown at running back, another experienced guy, 6'1", 235, one of the bigger running backs in the conference. Senior at wide receiver, junior at wide receiver, a junior at tight end. Offensive line, senior, sophomore, and then on defense as well, senior at edge rusher, a senior at corner, a senior at safety, a junior at the other safety. It's a very experienced team, and you got to think this Cal team is not expected to compete for the Pac-12 title, but they have a lot of experience and they have a lot of kind of that underdog mentality. This might be Cal's chance to strike.
Yeah, it is, and they weren't the best team last year. They were 1-3 and they only played 4 games. So it's it's a very small sample size, and Justin Wilcox is in his fifth year overall, as a head coach here, and he hasn't done horrible.
No.
He's 21-21 over his career, so 500. It's not terrible, but you're certainly going to be looking for some more success.
And what I will say though, the last year's results a little misleading. 1-3 obviously was the record, but UCLA, they got their butts kicked by UCLA. But after that, lost by 4 to Oregon State, lost by 1 to Stanford, and beat Oregon 21-17 when they were ranked number 21. So this Cal team, the 2 years before last year, 7-6 and 8-5. So I expect to see maybe not a championship caliber Cal team, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were 500 or above.
No, not at all. And this schedule's not too horrible, Shay. It's not. They got. One that pops out to me that's going to be real tough for them is they got to go to TCU second week of the year.
Fort Worth, tough place to play, and yeah, that will be tough to play at. And then they also hit Washington in their conference opener. That's a tough way to start the conference, at Washington, at Oregon out of the bye week, and also having to go at Stanford. It's another team that kind of drew a lot of tough road games. Their only really tough home game of the season is against USC. But Cal might have to be the road warriors. But if they can win 2 or 3 of those, 5 or 6 tough road games, they could be a team that's, a strong bowl team.
Yeah, and 2 really tough road games back to back to end the year. Stanford, second to last weekend, and then UCLA, right around Thanksgiving time. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be tough for the Cal Golden Bears.
My biggest concern with Cal is I don't know how good of a pass rush they're going to have. Their 2 defensive ends on this team, 325 pounds and a freshman, and 285 pounds and a sophomore. Those are big guys. They're going to stop the run very well. But are they going to have the speed? Are they going to have the agility to get to the quarterback consistently? And that's going to be a big issue for this Cal team because their secondary is solid, but if they don't get pressure, if they don't get any rush on, that secondary is going to get eaten alive as the year goes on.
Yeah, it is, and this is a secondary that's they got some experience. They're they have their first corner is a senior, followed by a sophomore, and then their 2 safeties are a senior and a junior. So this is a more experienced secondary on this team, as well as they got a good core linebackers here. They do. They got I'm gonna butcher this one. Melu Iosefa, I want to say.
I'll go with it.
He's coming in as a true freshman, and then they got Evan Tattersall, as a sophomore. So. And then they got a freshman along the defensive line as well, followed by a junior, sophomore, and senior. So they got some, of some diversity among the linebacking core and defensive line, but that secondary is pretty experienced.
It is. So we're gonna, like we always seem to do, we're going to change the schedule around. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna hit on Oregon State, and then we're gonna hit the legal, and then we're gonna do the South. Start hour number 2. We're gonna give our full conference standings prediction. And we're going to do Home Run Derby, and we'll push the tier list back to Monday.
That works.
Cool. Because we asked before we started recording, can we talk Pac-12 for an hour? I think we can talk Pac-12 for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I do. So we got about 5 minutes left here in hour number 1.
To the Beavers we
go.
So
we can quickly hit on the Oregon State Beavers.
I love this team's logo and name, by the way.
I do too.
I wish I could say... part of me wishes I lived on the West Coast, because if I did, I'd be an Oregon State Beavers fan, because that's great. I want to root for the Beavers, and I grew up in Fairborn, which is right next to Beaver Creek, and it's the Beaver Creek Beavers,
Right.
and I love it.
Yeah. So this is a a great team, and they haven't had success at all. And Jonathan Smith is their fourth year head coach, 9-22 overall, which is abysmal, to say the least. So they have the junior Tristan Gabia, coming back 6'2", 200. So he's not the, a taller guy by any means, but he can get the job done for you.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he played very sparingly last year, only one start, 63% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns a pick. He had 4 starts the year before. He's been kind of a career backup, but he's going to get his chance to start this year as a junior. They have a big running back, Parker, maybe the biggest running back in the conference, in Deshaun Fenwick, 6'2", 226. You tell me a guy on your offense is 6'2", 226. I'd say either really big red zone receiver or tight end. I wouldn't say running back.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. This guy's a tank as I hit my nose on the microphone here, but yeah, this guy's massive. And if I'm a linebacker or a safety and he's coming at you, I'm just gonna get out of the way.
And he's only a sophomore, so he's still got some fresh legs on him. He averaged 5.4 yards a carry last year, ran for 523 yards.
Yeah.
And he's actually a transfer from South Carolina. So not only is he a young guy, that's huge. He also ran in the SEC and averaged 5 yards a carry. And with some of those SEC defenses, if you're averaging 5 yards a carry as a freshman, I'm scared to see what you can do in the Pac-12.
Yeah, and they lost their number 5 all-time rusher in school history. So they got to fill that void, and this transfer does it.
I will say I don't expect much from this Oregon State team this year. I think they're still a year or two away from competing.
Right.
But I will say, just to give, if there's any Oregon State fans listening, to give you a positive light, I think Deshaun Fenwick's a sleeper for first team all conference.
I do too. He's looking really good.
He is.
And it's gonna be interesting to see how this plays out for Oregon State. So they have on defense they have the returning junior linebacker Avery Roberts. Led the team in tackles last year with 69 tackles. He had half a sack, 2.5 tackles for loss. So he's one of the core spots on this Oregon State defense. For Coach Smith. So next they have Omar Spates, another linebacker, coming back. This for his sophomore season. Second on the team in tackles, 63 tackles, 1 sack to his name. And so and then they have the where am I looking here? Gosh, there's so much stuff on these pages. I get lost so easy.
It's way more information than you ever thought you needed, but it's so cool. It feels like when you're done in this book that you're a fan of 123 different teams.
Right. And what I was looking for was this secondary is very young.
Very young.
Yeah. So they have their first corner on this list is Alex Austin, who's a redshirt freshman, 6'1", 184. He's a taller corner, but a bit skinnier. Yep. And then they have the one junior in this entire secondary is Rajon Wright. He was coming in from Kansas. He had 32 tackles, and so
going from Kansas to Oregon State, it's like dumpster fire to dumpster fire.
Yeah, he's 6'2", 182. A skinnier guy as well, and then they have two a freshman and a sophomore at safety. The freshman is Akili Arnold, a redshirt freshman, 5'11", 193, and then the sophomore Alton Julian, 6'2", 203. So a very young secondary for Coach Smith.
And Julian's going to have a huge role this year because he's the only guy in the secondary that's over 200 pounds. So he's got to be the hard-hitting enforcer safety. What worries me about these guys is not their experience, but their size. A lot of these guys are 180 pounds, and that concerns me. Maybe they're probably good in coverage. Can they tackle in open space? And that's always a big thing for corners. We saw, a guy that was taken in the first round last year, he dropped a little bit more than he was supposed to because he can't tackle, C.J. Henderson.
Right.
And that's always a big thing for me. Can you tackle? If a guy catches the ball, can you bring him down one-on-one? And I don't know if a corner that's 180 can do that. But I will say a big role on this team is the senior duo up front of Simon Sandberg, the defensive tackle, stopping the running game. He's going to have to step up big time as a senior. I like him a lot, though. He played he had 3 starts last year, 11 tackles. and 7 starts the year before. So he's a little inexperienced, especially for a senior. But he's a guy I think that's earned the playing time, and he's going to have to be the leader of that defensive line. And then in the linebacker core, Andres Hughes Murray, senior 6'2", 244. He's their top edge rusher. And if Oregon State wants any chance to upset some teams this year, they're going to need that pass rush, and he's going to have to be the guy.
Yeah, he is. And, we'll touch on the schedule really quick before we take our hour break. Tough opening game at Purdue in West Lafayette.
Very tough.
That's going to be real tough for Oregon State. And then a few weeks later, they travel to Los Angeles, taking on USC. And then right after that, Washington at home. And then they end the year, back to back to back. Stanford at home, Arizona State at home, and then travel to Eugene.
Yeah, that's tough. And what bugs me here is they play Hawaii, which is really cool. They play Hawaii at home. When you schedule Hawaii, you're supposed to schedule them on the road, so you go to Hawaii. What were you doing?
Yeah, I doubt Hawaii wants to travel to
Oregon,
to Corvallis. So,
yeah, right.
It's that's an interesting game there. So we're gonna take our quick break. When we come back, we got MLB home run talk, and the rest of this Pac-12 talk. So
we had a lot of fun so far, but we still like Stanford and Washington, but we still got to get into USC, UCLA, and Utah. So there's still a lot of contenders to talk about.
Yeah, so we'll be right back here on Testa and Neal. Keep it real right here on YouTube and WWSU 106.9. back here on Testa and Neal Keep It Real, right here on YouTube and WWSU 106.9 FM. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We're in the studio today for the first time in 2 months. It's a blast.
Yes, we are. And I mean, we were excited about scheduling Power 5 conferences on Friday, and it's been a blast. But we can talk about Power 5 conferences all day. We might have to start calling it College Football Fridays.
Yeah, we might. And I had to put my glasses on to see some of the stuff in this book. But, next is USC, the Trojans.
Top of the South.
Yeah, so Clay Helton is in his 7th season at USC, and they were 5-1 last year, 5-0 in the conference, and they were number 1 in the South. So,
yeah, and they have high expectations again this year. And I mean, when you talk USC, it starts at QB, and it's Caden Slovis, the sophomore. They let JT Daniels leave and go to Georgia because they have so much belief in this kid. True freshman season, he had 11 starts, 3,500 yards. 30 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. This is a guy that's a potential future Heisman winner, and he's probably the best quarterback in the Pac-12.
Yeah, he is, and this is one that they're looking really good. And Caden Slovis looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now.
He does. At running back, 6 foot, 222-pound Keontae Ingram Jr. And Ingram last year at Texas. In his 3 years at Texas, had 18 starts, about 1,800 yards, averaged 5 yards a carry, but it was always kind of like a complimentary back. He gets a chance to be the starter at USC, and he's going to have a strong year. I think they're going to be more of an air raid offense with Slovis and some of these receivers that they have, but I think Ingram's going to get a chance to cement himself as one of the top running backs in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I think so too. He's one of these bowling ball running backs, as well. 6 foot, 6 foot, 6 foot even, 222 pounds. So he's big, and he's going to be coming down the middle of the field right at you, and he looks really good. So on defense, they look very young, Shea. They look really young here. Mm-hmm. They got a few freshmen on this defensive line. Starting with Corey Foreman here. And as well as Ishmael Sofer. So, they're a very young defensive line here. So,
yeah.
But a bit of a somewhat experienced back seven, I guess.
The secondary and the linebackers.
Secondary and linebackers.
I guess you could call it a back seven.
Back seven, front seven, and back seven. I don't know. I've never heard it called.
The linebackers would always be in the 7, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. But they're experienced, no doubt about it. They got a senior as their nickelback, Greg Johnson, who's pretty good here. Mm-hmm. He had 15 tackles last year, 1 tackle for loss, no interceptions, but I think he's a pretty solid nickelback.
Yeah, and 2 guys that are really gonna have to step up on this defense this year with the inexperience. Greg Johnson, the nickelback, he plays a little bit of safety, plays a little bit of slot corner, even blitzes off the edge sometimes, but he's got a lot of experience, and he's going to have to step up and be really the leader of that secondary. And then you also have the free safety, Isaiah Polamau, 6'4", 205 pounds. He's absolutely huge. I don't know if you ever played the old Madden games, Parker, but in the Ultimate Team, they'd sometimes make a free safety Calvin Johnson card. He's like free safety Calvin Johnson.
Right.
He's huge. And we always talk about, the middle linebacker is the quarterback of the defense. But the free safety is the quarterback of the secondary, and it's good for USC that they have a senior back there leading everybody.
Yeah, and this schedule is fun.
Uh-huh.
It's really fun. They start the year at home against San Jose State, 2 home games right in a row, and then they welcome Stanford to Los Angeles, and then they get on the road for a game against the Cougars up at Washington State, and then but the 2 games that I'm really looking at: Utah coming off Utah's bye on October 9th at home.
Uh-huh.
And then they travel to South Bend with Notre Dame coming off the bye. So 2 tough teams coming off their bye week, especially really tough team, in Notre Dame going to South Bend. And then to end the year, they got UCLA and BYU back-to-back at home.
Yeah, I will say 2 things I really like. All gas, no brakes for Clay Helton this year. I mean, it's a tough schedule through and through. He tests him right off the bat, tests him in the middle, and tests him at the end. But this schedule is more front-loaded, and if they can get to the Notre Dame game unbeaten and beat Notre Dame, at that point, their last 5 games are nowhere near as tough as their first 7 are. So you get to that Notre Dame game undefeated, and you find a way to win that game. We're not just talking about Pac-12 championship at that point. We're also talking college football playoff.
Yeah, we are, and this team looks really good. They do. They're going to be, projected to finish first in the South, and I think that's
Probably first in the conference.
Yeah.
I think we'd expect. We talked about Washington being the favorites in the North. If I had to pick right now, I haven't seen anybody on the field yet, but I think USC would beat Washington.
Right, and this is, it's, for me, it's either going to be, it's going to, more than likely USC in the South, and then it's going to be Oregon or Washington State, and for the Pac-12 title.
Mm-hmm. I agree. The last thing I want to talk about with USC, they have maybe my favorite wide receiver in the country, at least storyline wise, Drake London. This guy's a sophomore, but he is built in a lab. 6'5", 215 pounds. His first 2 seasons at USC, he has had 500 yards receiving. He was second team all conference last year. I think he's going to be first team all conference this year. He's 6'5". He runs like a slot receiver, but he's built like a tight end. I think Slovis and London this year could be what Trask and Pitts were last year.
Yeah, it's possible, and they look really good. They do, and it's they're going to be a strong team for sure. Next, the Utah Utes.
Utes
coming out of Salt Lake City here, so they've been strong. In all of Kyle Whittingham's seasons here at Utah. 17th year overall as a head coach, 17th year in Salt Lake City, and they look very strong. They got they got Charlie Brewer coming back, the senior, for the Utah Utes.
It's great. It's crazy to think. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
It's crazy to think that Whittingham, Utah was his first coaching job. He's done such a good job at Utah.
Right, and last year they were 3-2, finished number 3 in the South, but I expect them to be up there in the South this year. They look really strong.
And this defense is, in my opinion, my three favorite defenses in the country. It's funny because I'm not going to throw Ohio State or Alabama in there, even though I think they're both top tier defenses. I just think Alabama and Ohio State always have a bunch of freshmen and guys that are starting for the first time that I don't know about. My 3 favorite defenses that I know are going to be top tier because of the experience, because of what they did last season, and they have a lot of starters coming back. Yeah. Cincinnati Bearcats, the Iowa State Cyclones out of the Big 12, who I'm excited to talk about Iowa State because they not only have what I think is the best defense in the country, they have Brock Purdy at quarterback. That's going to be a really good team. I might pick them to beat Oklahoma and win the Big 12. I'm sleeping on it for a few weeks, but I'm thinking about it. And the Utah Utes. So Utah, Cincinnati, Iowa State, those are like my 3 favorite defenses in the country. Utah's got an S-tier defense because we love talking about tier lists. This is an S-tier defense.
Yeah, and Charlie Brewer comes in from Baylor. And he 39 career starts at Baylor, 9,700 yards, 64% completion percentage. And he's coming into Utah, and he's gonna make an impact. And he looks really good here for Kyle Whittingham.
Utah, one of the few teams in the conference that we've talked about so far that does not have the big bruising running back. They opted for the more elusive, shifty guy, the LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles kind of type, and that's T.J. Pledger, the junior, 5'9", 193. That doesn't mean he won't run over you because he still can, and he still is not afraid to embrace contact. This is a guy that has game-changing speed.
Yeah, and these receivers I'm looking at look really good. Devon, Vele. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but Devon Vele, a redshirt freshman, 6'4", 205, and then you have Britton Kobe, the junior, 5'8", 172. So you got a little bit of
deep threat and route runner.
Yeah, you got a little bit of both sides of the sword here with receivers. And then they have a relatively inexperienced offensive line. They got 2 redshirt freshmen on this line, as well as a sophomore and then a senior and a junior holding down the center and left tackle positions.
And Utah runs a 2 tight end set, which is really rare in college football nowadays. But they have 2 really good tight ends, Brant Kluth and Cole. Oh, good Lord, I'm gonna butcher this. Cole Fotheringham.
I think that's
Fotheringham?
right. I think that's right. I think it's Fotheringham.
But they're both experienced tight ends, and I expect a lot from them. Like you said, Vele and Covey, very talented receivers. And the best football team I've seen in my lifetime, that 2007 Patriots team, they built it around Randy Moss, the deep threat, and Wes Welker, the route runner. And, it works. 1 route runner, 1 deep threat. It works. So I like what Utah's doing here. Their offensive line is a little inexperienced, like you said, but I think they have the best left tackle in the country. And Bamadele, Olaseni, 6'7", 335-pound senior.
Absolute mammoth.
4 years of starting experience. This guy screams to me Mekhi Becton, but with better technique. Mekhi Becton was really raw coming out of college. He had a lot to learn. This dude's got the size of Becton, and I think he's a better blocker. And it's terrifying.
Yeah, 6'7", 335 is massive.
Imagine being a freshman defensive lineman and lining up across from him.
It'd be like,
Or being the safety that blitzes on a play and you run into him.
Right. And, for all my Noblesville High School people, it'd be like me going up against Cameron Knight, who's playing at IU right now as an offensive lineman. It wouldn't go well for the defensive lineman. So this looks really strong, and Olaseni is going to be one of the top offensive linemen coming out next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to be really, really exciting to see what this Utah team is capable of. I firmly believe that this Utah team is capable of winning the South. And we talked about it at the beginning of the show. USC is the more talented football team, but Utah's got a lot of experience where USC doesn't have experience. The big game that everyone's circling, October 9th, Utah at USC in LA. We talked about Washington, Oregon in the North. That could be the winner of that wins the North. USC, Utah, the winner of that could win the South. I mean, there's two really, really important games in the Pac-12 this year.
Right, and the one that jumps out to me is they travel to BYU week number 2, their first road game of the year. That's going to be really tough for the Utah Utes. They got they got one tough game in the non-con. They open up the year with Weber State. Who's I know nothing about Weber State, to be honest with you.
Damian Lillard went there.
He did. That's probably the only notable alumni that Weber State has. But and then they go to BYU. So and then like you said, that that October 9th game against USC is going to be a good one. And then they host UCLA October 30th, and then right after that they travel to Palo Alto to take on the Cardinals.
The USC Sun Devils, or the Arizona State Sun Devils, I just call them the USC Sun Devils. The Arizona State Sun Devils, led by Herm Edwards, come in at number 3 here in the South. Jaden Daniels, the sophomore quarterback, he had a really, really strong freshman year. 12 starts, almost 3,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, throw in 350 rushing yards. This is a playmaker, man. He is like the Pac-12's version of Kyler Murray.
Yeah, he is, and he looks really good. Last year he 58% completion percentage, 700 yards, 5 touchdowns to 1 interception.
He does not turn the ball over
in 4 games. So it looks, he looks really strong. He's quite possibly could be one of the best receivers in the Pac-12.
Well, that's
the quarterbacks in the Pac-12.
That's what impresses me most about this kid. He's still 20 years old. He's played 16 games in his college football career, 3 interceptions. A guy that takes care of the ball like that with the playmaking ability that he has is going to give you a chance to win every single game.
Yeah, he is. And this Arizona State team, they haven't they've been pretty good in Herm Edwards' tenure. 17-13. They're 1-1 in bowl games, 10-4 at home, so they are better in Tempe, than on the road. And their road record is 6-8 in Herm Edwards' tenure so far there in 4 years. I'm a big Herm Edwards fan, so I find myself rooting for the Sun Devils more than I should. But this team looks very fun, and especially on defense, they have Chase Lucas, the senior, coming back. He had 15 tackles, 5 pass defense last year.
Mm-hmm. That secondary is going to hold down this defense, man. You got Chase Lucas, you got Jack Jones, Evan Fields, and DeAndre Pierce. 4 seniors holding down that back line of defense. If the front 7 can be average, that secondary is good enough to compete for a Pac-12 title.
Yeah, they are. And this is a relatively experienced starting lineup on defense. Only 1 sophomore. The rest are juniors and seniors from what I'm seeing. So very experienced defense here for Herm Edwards, who I know he's got to love.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at their schedule. I like the game against BYU. BYU playing a lot of these Pac-12 teams in their non-con. I respect it. But other than that, it's a very winnable non-conference against Southern Utah and UNLV. They take on UCLA on the road, Utah on the road, and then Washington on the road. What's going to be their make-or-break point of the season? They have a really, really tough 3-game stretch towards the back half of the season. USC at home, Washington on the road, and then Oregon State on the road. And I know Oregon State's not expected to be much in the Pac-12 this year, but Corvallis is still a really tough place to play. So you have to go from a home game against maybe the favorites in the conference to Seattle to Corvallis. That's a pretty tough 3-week stretch, and it could be what determines Arizona State's season.
Yeah, it is. I'm really looking at this game in Provo against BYU. It looks really good. And, they host Stanford on the 8th of October. And like you said, round out the year with Washington, Oregon State, and, the Wildcats of Arizona. So I like this schedule for Herm Edwards and company. I do. It looks pretty strong.
It does. Let's move on to UCLA, another top-tier quarterback in this conference under Chip Kelly, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. This guy, in his last full season, had 8 starts, 58% completion, 7 touchdowns, that was last year. He had 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 1,300 yards. His last full season, 2,700 yards, 21 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, a little high. But this is a guy that has all the talent in the world and has the ability to, win games by himself. And that's anytime you have one of those, that's dangerous. And a lot of teams in the South do. In the North, we talked about really, it's kind of up in the air in terms of quarterback battles. Washington's got a solid quarterback, but you don't really think of anybody with game-changing talent in the North. In the South, Slovis, as well as Thompson-Robinson, and with Jaden Daniels at Arizona State, and Charlie Brewer at Utah. That's 4 guys right there that I think can win games with their arms and their legs.
Yeah, they look really good. And, Thompson Robinson looked really good last year. He did. He had 65% completion percentage, 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks, a QBR of 156, and only 7 games. So he played really strong for Chip Kelly last year, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. And this defense is another one that's relatively experienced. They have almost all juniors and seniors. I actually think they are all juniors and seniors on this Bruin defense here. So. They got a couple, got a young receiver in Cam Brown, redshirt freshman, 6'1", 192. And then they look really strong here. They do.
And UCLA, I think, is always going to be looked at as the little brother of LA when it comes to football. Obviously, they're the better basketball team, but I think USC always trumps them in football. But they're going to get a chance to prove themselves this year. LSU at home in week 2. It's not the same LSU team that had Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, but any team under Coach Orgeron is still going to be a really tough team to beat. And then in conference play, at Stanford and David Shaw, at Washington and Jimmy Lake, at Utah, as well as home against Oregon and at USC. UCLA, we don't know if they're for real or not, but they're going to get a chance to prove it.
Yeah, they are. And, Chip Kelly hasn't had the best record in his tenure in Los Angeles here so far, 10-21 in 4 years. So, but this team looks like they can be pretty strong here for Chip Kelly. Their schedule doesn't look horrible. They have, they open up the year. They don't go on the road until week 5, and that's that first road game is in Palo Alto against Stanford. They open up the year against Hawaii. Hawaii again coming to the West Coast, something that I really don't understand. Like you said earlier, but like you said, LSU bye week 3. They got 2 bye weeks this season, Shea. September 11th and November 6th, and then the final stretch of the year, Colorado at USC and Cal. So this UCLA schedule looks pretty good.
Let's move on to the Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado, we talked about it with the the toughest schedule segment that we did earlier in the week. They go up against Texas A&M to start the year, and then Minnesota. And then they hit the road and take on Herm Edwards, and then USC. That's a really tough 4-game slate to start the year. But I'm excited to see what they're able to do. JT Shrout, their starting quarterback, 6'3" sophomore. He's not, the most experienced guy. Neither is really anybody on this offense. The talent lies within the defense. Their defense, very experienced. Almost entirely juniors and seniors, minus actually their top corner, who's a true freshman.
Yeah, and Shrout comes in as a transfer from Tennessee, but another smaller, shifty back for Carl Dorrell, and that's Jarek Broussard, the sophomore, 5'9", 185, and another smaller, shifty back for the Colorado Buffaloes, something that we know is something that's different from the smaller, bulky back. We have a smaller, shifty back here now with the Colorado Buffaloes, and then,
Right.
this is a lot of experienced defenses here, in the South. They looked. So you have the where am I looking here? The leading tackler last year is the linebacker Nate Landman. He's a senior this year, 6'3", 235. He had 53 tackles last year.
Yeah.
4 sacks, 1 pass defense, and 1 quarterback hit. So this defense is led by Landman, and then they have a guy who comes back this year with for Carl Doro, and that's Mekhi Blackman, the senior corner. He had, so I can find it, 15 games or 15 tackles, 6 pass defense, 1 interception, 1 tackle for loss. So he's their leading corner on this team.
Yeah, he is. And I mean, I just look at their last 5 years. They went 10-4 in 2016. Really exceeded all expectations. Beat up on Colorado State. Beat Oregon on the road in Eugene. Beat up on Oregon State. Beat Arizona State bad. Beat Stanford. Beat UCLA. Beat Arizona. Beat Washington State. Beat Utah. And then lost to Washington in the Pac-12 title game. Really, but though, you look at it, there are only 4 losses that year. USC, Michigan, Washington in the Pac-12 championship, and then their bowl game. That was a really good team. The last 3 years, they went 5-7. And last year, though, 4-2. They beat UCLA and Thompson Robinson. They beat Stanford. They beat San Diego State, and they beat Arizona. Only loss coming to Utah, who's one of the top teams in this conference. I'm not ready to write off the Buffaloes yet. I think they were trending up last year, and I think they really get a good shot to take that next step and really become a contender in this conference.
Yeah, and the game I'm really looking at, they played really well against Stanford in Palo Alto, won that game 35-32 last year. So, Carl Dorrell's doing something right here.
He is. This Colorado team, very similar to what we talked about with Cal in the North. Very experienced, but not a lot of expectations and a chance to prove people wrong.
Yeah, and taking a look at the schedule, this is, we talked about it, did our toughest schedules. They have the number 9th toughest schedule in the country. Open up the year against Northern Colorado at home, and then they get Texas A&M
at Mile High.
Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M come to Mile High, and then they host the Gophers in Minnesota, and then they travel to Tempe, USC, Arizona, at Cal, at Oregon, host Oregon State. And then they go to Los Angeles, UCLA, host Washington, and finish out the year at Utah and Salt Lake City.
There's no breaks in that schedule. There is no breaks in that schedule. It's a team that I think has the foundation to be a strong team, but it's a team that is not going to get any weeks off. They're going to have to come in, play hard football every single week of the year. But if they do that, I think it's a team that can win 8-9 games.
Yeah, they look really good. Let's move on here to
Arizona.
The Arizona Wildcats in Jed Fish's first year coming in. Is his second year overall. Last year or this year, and it's his first year as the head coach. So, last year they were not a good team by any means. Did not win a game last year.
No, they weren't very good at all. And just looking at, they went 0-5, but it was not pretty. They lost 34-30 to USC, and they're like, hey, USC's pretty good. Maybe this team can hang. But then they got blown out by Washington, blown out by UCLA, blown out by Colorado, and lost 70-7 to Arizona State. It was not a good football team. The good news for them, 8 returning starters on offense, 9 returning starters on defense. So I don't know if you want to say that's good news or bad news because it's a team that didn't win a game. But they are getting the same group of guys back, and hopefully they can grow from last year.
Yeah, the quarterback position here is interesting because they have Will Plummer, who was their primary guy last year, and they had Grant Gunnell and true freshman Will Plummer last year. A lot of people coming out of the spring. Plummer was the leader of this team, but he has a couple guys coming in as transfers. The guy Washington State Gunnar Cruz. And Jordan McLeod from UCF. McLeod is the projected starter with Plummer sitting behind him. So we'll see how this fares out for Jed Fish.
And Plummer didn't do himself many favors. Didn't throw a touchdown last year. 3 interceptions and no touchdowns. McLeod's coming off a really strong year at USF. 17 touchdowns, almost 2,400 yards in his last full season. So I think he is the favorite right now. And I think unless Will Plummer, catches people's eyes in spring and summer practice. I think you go with McLeod week 1 against the BYU Cougars.
Yeah, and this defense is another pretty experienced defense here. You got a freshman at free safety, freshman at corner, and sophomore at defensive tackle. But other than that, all juniors and seniors here for Jed Fish. Their schedule, number 7th toughest in the country. Open up the year in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium against BYU, and then host 2 games back to back: San Diego State and Northern Arizona. Travel to Eugene, take on the Ducks. Bye week, host UCLA at Colorado, host Washington at USC, host California, host the Utah Utes, and then finish out the year in at Washington State and in Tempe against the Arizona State Sun Devils.
Yeah, it's a tough conference schedule for sure. And BYU and San Diego State are no pushovers in the Mountain West. The Mountain West has become tougher and tougher every year with BYU, San Diego State, and Boise. But I think this team has a lot to prove. And this team, I don't think very much like Oregon State. I think they're a year or 2 away. But I am excited to watch Trayvon Mason this year, the senior defensive tackle. 6'5", 315 pounds, 11 starts last year, 11 starts, 44 tackles, 6 tackles for loss. This is a guy that just wreaks havoc in the backfield, and he's built like an NFL defensive lineman. I expect him to be an NFL defensive lineman here coming up at the end of the year.
Yeah, I do too. And quickly going over their schedule here, it's a tough one. It is. We got about 5 minutes left in today's show.
Let's do the standings really quick, and then we'll really quick hit on. I guess we still have time to hit on the home run derby on Monday a little bit, but I did not expect this show to last, or this college football segment to last all show. But you'll learn every day.
Yeah, a little bit of a shorter show for you today. Shea is headed to Dayton to do the Dragons game tonight. So we're going to be about a little over 20 minutes, or a little under 20 minutes, and a little under 20 minutes early today. But quickly go over our projected standings for the Pac-12.
We'll start with the North, and I am going to switch up 2 things. And you might not agree with me on this first one. I think the gutsy move by Mario Cristobal pays off. I have the Oregon Ducks winning the North. I have Washington in 2nd, Stanford in 3rd, Cal in 4th, Washington State 5, and Oregon State 6.
Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm with you. I'm gonna take Oregon to win the North. Washington 2, Stanford 3, Cal is going to be 4, Washington State 5.
Look at us agree.
And Oregon State will be 6.
Look at us agree. Love to see it.
Yeah. It's rare that it happens, but we agree here.
We're probably both wrong.
Right, and that's a common theme on this show. But for the South, I love Utah.
I agree.
I really do.
Slovis is so good, but I think Utah's the better football team.
I do too. I'm going to take Utah 1. I am. USC will be 2 for me. I'm going to put Arizona State at 3. I really believe in what Herm Edwards is doing. I love the Buffaloes, man. I'm going to put them at 4. UCLA 5, Arizona 6.
We agreed again. Dang it. I wasn't sure you were going to put Colorado over UCLA. I think UCLA takes a step back. I think Thompson Robinson has a good year, but I can't. I mean, other than Thompson Robinson, it's a team that I don't know much about, and I think Colorado. I know more about Colorado. So I go Utah 1, USC 2, Arizona State 3, Colorado 4, UCLA 5, and Arizona 6. So hypothetical Pac-12 championship game: Oregon and Utah. Who you got in that?
I'm taking Oregon. I got to take Oregon there. Utah's really, really tough. I think it's going to be close, but I think Oregon's got it.
Utah has maybe the best defense in college football. Oregon's got better playmakers. I've got Oregon by a touchdown.
Yeah, it's going to be really close. So there you have it, folks. Our Pac-12 predictions and Pac-12 breakdown here on Testa and Neal.
We both got Oregon winning the conference.
We do. That's crazy. So we got about a little over 3 minutes here left on today's show. We're going to quickly hit on the home run derby, because what's more fun than seeing the guys hit a lot of dingers?
This is going to be hype. And it's a great roster this year in the home run derby. I mean, Trey Mancini coming off of the beating cancer. Love to see it. Trey Mancini, Trevor Story, the hometown kid, Juan Soto, Matt Olson, Joey Gallo, as well as Shohei Ohtani, Pete Alonso, and who's the one I'm missing?
Did you say Soto?
I did. Soto, Olsen, Gallo, Ohtani, Mancini, Story,
Salvi Perez.
and Alonso. It's a good lineup.
So this
When Salvador Perez and Trey Mancini are your 7th and 8th best home run hitters in the Derby, it's a good Derby.
It is, and this is how the seeding lines up for this. Shohei Ohtani is 1, as he should be.
As he should be. He should get a first-round bye, to be honest.
And then, I don't know why they don't put these in order. Juan Soto will be 8. Joey Gallo is 2, who I think is deserving of that as well. Trevor Story will be 7. Matt Olson will be 3. Mancini 6. Salvi Perez 4. Alonso 5.
So we'll quickly predict Final Four and championship, and then the winner. So my Final Four, I'm going to go with Ohtani, Alonso, Olsen, and Gallo. My championship is going to be Ohtani and Gallo. And my winner, as much as I hate to say it, I'm going Joey Gallo.
Wow.
I really want Ohtani to win, but I think Gallo's swing is perfect for Coors.
So my Final Four, Ohtani, Olsen, Gallo, Salvi Perez.
Okay.
And winner, I can't bet against Ohtani, man. I'm taking Ohtani to win the Derby.
All right.
I think he's gonna.
He's gonna pitch in the All-Star game the next day.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ohtani pitch the home run derby to himself.
He's capable.
I think he is capable of that.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a blast today. Today's show was fun.
So
it wasn't what we planned, but it was fun.
Right, and it felt good to get back in the studio. I miss it out here.
Yeah. I can't. You only got to survive like 4 more weeks.
Right. I can't wait to get back here on and get back into the year. Start calling some volleyball and basketball. It's gonna be fun.
We had a fun day at orientation, man. I'm excited about the future of every department, honestly.
Yeah, I am too. And it was, we had a lot of people stop by and say hi to us, and some people took some T-shirts. So
a lot of people took some T-shirts.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to a great year. We have a lot of pieces in place to be, have a really good year, and we're, we say it all the time. We got a lot of pedal left. We're just getting started, and we're not even, a quarter of a mile of the way there. We're not even an eighth of a mile away.
Not
so
a chance.
It's gonna be so much fun this year.
Yeah, no, it is. I'm really excited about everything that we have on the horizon. A little bit of a show plug there, but everything that we have coming up, I'm excited about. And it's been a blast. But today was great, and I would love to do 15 more minutes, but unfortunately, if I'm not in Dayton in 36 minutes, I'm probably going to get fired. So I'm not going to take that chance.
Yeah. So with that, everybody out there, thank you for listening here on Testa and Neal. Keep it real. I almost said the perspective. This is not that show.
That is coming back, though.
Yes, it is coming back. Looking forward to that. But if you're on YouTube, thank you for catching us there. And if you're listening on WWSU 106.9, we so greatly appreciate it. And have a good weekend, everybody.
Absolutely. We'll see you Monday.
We'll see you on Monday. For Shea Neal across the desk from me, I'm Parker Testa saying so long and keep it real. We'll talk to you Monday.